Hello, everyone. I hope this finds you all safe and healthy. These are definitely trying times that we're going through. I guess I'm going to try doing this a few times a week since, like most of you, I'm holed up here at home. Probably have a lot more time on my hands than I'm used to. I have been working, but things are slowed down a bit. So yeah, I figured I'd pump out a few of these episodes just to stay in touch with everyone. And yeah, if you guys want to hit me up, you can hit me up on Facebook or through Messenger on Instagram. And if you have anything you want to share about this difficult time that we're going through, maybe we can even work something out where we send, if you want to, that is, you can send, a clip, WAV file, MP3, and we can put them all together on future episodes. Something like that might be cool. Everyone's feeling isolated, cut off, and I just like to give a platform for people to talk if they want to. And if you guys want to listen to me, I know that I'm out there quite a bit. If you guys listen to my weekly show at Gimme Radio, Metal Matters, you get to hear my voice on every Tuesday. And this is just a sort of on and off show that I'm maintaining. It all kind of started with Everything Went Black. And built up from there. And I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I want to do with this show because Metal Matters has taken up a lot of my time. And it pretty much, takes up all of the musical content that I could be talking about, unless it sort of goes beyond the extreme heavy metal, sort of vibe. So still trying to figure out how to do this show. I know there's people out there that listen, and these episodes come out infrequently at this point, but it's still something I want to keep doing. Lately, Jeff Cackside and I, formerly of ISIS and Palms, we've been doing these horror shows, which have been a lot of fun. And for any of you guys out there who listen to Necromaniacs, you might be wondering where those episodes are. So Mike and I, just because of a number of reasons, schedule primarily, we went on hiatus doing that show, but we are definitely going to be doing new episodes, and we're going to be producing episodes every week, and Jeff is going to join us on the Necromaniacs team. So on a weekly basis, the show will be a combination of me and Mike Scandato, or me and Jeff, and maybe even at some point the three of us, because now everyone's using Zoom. Props to Zoom. They must be getting a real spike in their stock. One of the only stocks that might be doing well these days. They seem to have rescued everyone from obscurity. So yeah, we're going to try that out, see how it works. But Jeff is somebody I've known forever. Great guy. If you guys listen to Metal Matters, Randy Larson is oftentimes a co-host on that show when we do the classic records. And me, Jeff, and Randy go way back. And Randy and Jeff go even further back. They played in the band Cable together, which I'm sure you guys have heard of. And there was an early version of ISIS where Randy played guitar. And that version of the band was never recorded, but Randy spent a lot of time playing with them for a few months. But yeah, Jeff is going to be joining the fold, trying to figure out, put some ideas together for shows, the format. There's going to be a lot of cool discussions like you guys are used to. But I think we're going to add more stuff. Since it's going to be a weekly show, there's going to be more by way of news items that are coming out in the horror field. And there's a lot of stuff. I mean, I feel like the last few years, the United States has been going through a sort of renaissance of good independent horror. The Witch, Black Coat's Daughter, Color Out of Space, just to name a few. Well, actually, Richard Stanley, I guess technically Color Out of Space, though it is a U.S. production. Richard Stanley, South African, but I'm not going to split hairs. Yeah, it's a bunch of stuff going on. Going to pick up that show. One of the reasons why we took such a hiatus was because there was this wave of activity that I was involved with that was going to be happening, supposed to be happening literally right now. And all of that stuff has been put on the back burner. For those of you who know me personally out there, you might know that I had been working really hard studying and preparing for this exam called the Professional Engineering Exam, which I started studying in November, and I've been cranking away, taking up a lot of my time. The date of the exam was April 22nd. And here in New York City, we're at ground zero of this whole pandemic in the United States. And everyone's locked down here. Lockdown is kind of a harsh word. Everyone's staying home. It's not like there's armed police wearing black tactical gear, patrolling the streets and shooting people who are leaving their homes. It's not like that at all. But people are staying home. If you're a non-essential worker, you can't go into the city. Everything's closed. It's takeout only. And non-essential businesses are closed. And this congregation of engineers who show up to take an exam is deemed a non-essential work activity. So I have to reschedule the exam. I'm not sure when that's going to happen. I'm thinking July would be a safe month to figure on this because I got to be completely honest with everybody, though the projected peak is sometime this month. I don't see May being that much better than April. And June might be the time where things are slowly going to be turning back to, I'm not going to say normal, but a higher level of activity. So for me to take this exam, I think July is probably the best bet for me. So anyway, there was that. There was this gigantic tour that we were going to be going on, which was going to take up, a few weeks of my time right there. There's the production of the new Tombs LP, which has actually started already. Drums are complete. And the whole thing was going to be this flurry of activity that was going to take up a lot of my time, a lot of hours preparing for these things, rehearsal, lyric writing, studying, rehearsal for the record, rehearsal for the tour, all this kind of stuff. And also not to mention my regular job, the production of the weekly Metal Matters podcast. So Necro had to take a bit of a backseat. And so that's why there hasn't been any episodes. And now that there's a lot of time on my hands, and me and Jeff have been doing this thing through the Everything Went Black platform, this horror-related episodes. Why not combine forces? Maybe we're going to relaunch a little bit earlier than I had anticipated, and it's going to be a weekly thing. So stay tuned if you're into horror. If you enjoyed that show, it's going to be all of what it was and more. So, we'll be planning things out a little bit more. There'll be more of a format, a little discussion. And just hang in there. And, Mike has his own audience too, which I'm sure he's promoting this to as well. And for those of you guys out there who like that stuff, stay tuned. So anyway, normal. I mentioned that word earlier, and I got to be honest, I don't think that things are ever going to be back to normal. And, everyone's alone or isolated. You don't see any people really. Everyone's at a distance. Most of this is a mental game. I think that statistically, most of us are going to make it out of this thing. Obviously, there are older family members, people who have existing health problems or underlying genetic features which make them vulnerable to this virus, which all that stuff's going to be revealing itself in the coming months. So, I'm concerned, and, my heart goes out to people who are suffering, but I think that most of us are going to be okay, and we're going to come out the other end of this thing into a different world. But making it from point A to point B, that's really the battle. to find a way to keep yourself in a positive mind space. And I say that, but I also have difficulty with that as well. I mean, that's my advice, is keep a strong mental, thing going on. But I have that problem, man, of my mind goes into all these different directions, and I guess like trying to keep composed during all this, trying to find ways that you can put your mind, transform your thoughts is part of the battle. Like for me, the biggest thing for me, and I'm not preaching, but I try to keep a regular schedule. I still wake up at the same time I do, which is early. I'm usually up and at it like around 5:30 in the morning. And, even though I don't have to travel into the city, I still make sure I get my ass up, I change my clothes, and I start doing my thing. And that has given me a sense of regularity to the day. And still trying to keep on the exercise routines, though all of the gyms are closed, all of the places to train are closed. I still try to do something on a daily basis, either push-ups, squats, some shadow boxing, jumping rope, planks, that kind of thing. For those of you who follow George St. Pierre on Instagram, he's got some pretty cool exercises that he does, and trying to incorporate some of that stuff into my daily workouts as well. And I've actually set some fitness goals for myself. Now that I have this, isolation thing going on, I'm going to try to really focus on getting my push-ups in order, trying to get higher volume, a higher push-up count out there. So far, it's been good. So far, I've actually added some reps. So I'm looking forward to improving on that. And also, more importantly, the physical activity just keeps your brain functioning. It's real easy. And I fall victim to this as well, as to lay down, look at the ceiling, and just worry about what the fuck's going on out there. And, everyone's constantly bombarded by these facts and figures, and none of us are experts on virology or epidemiology or any of this biology that's going on out there. So we are confused maybe a little bit and unsure about things. And, it's a complicated situation. It's evolving every day. Things are changing. And I think that in order to not get overwhelmed by this, it's important to figure out ways to keep your mind even and in a good place. So, that's my, PSA as part of this, this announcement here. Another cool thing is having time to get to the things that have kind of been put on the back burner, i.e. reading and watching some of these great streaming shows that are out there. And I just recently, I finished a couple of books, actually. I finished reading this sort of a biography. Well, it's not a biography. It's The Last Testament of Anton Szandor LaVey by Boyd Rice. It's his recollection of the life of Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan. Out of five being excellent and one being poor, I would rate it at a 3.5 for a read. I generally enjoy Boyd Rice's writing style. I don't always agree with his content as well, but I think he's a great writer. Some of the things he says I think are stupid. Some of the things he says I think are cool. But this was like interesting facts about Anton LaVey and the Church of Satan. But I just thought in general, the book kind of felt a little dialed, a little phoned in, as you would say. It was culled from existing articles, and it was cool. But I mean, it's worth reading, but it wasn't like this completely mind-blowing experience. I read a verbal history of the Swans, and I found that to be quite good. I would give that a 4.5 out of a possible 5. And, if you are a fan of Michael Gira and the Swans and Angels of Light, and this is something you should definitely read. It includes interviews and testimonies and all this other background information about the band. Michael Gira is also interviewed, and it pieces together from before the existence of the band, from the early days, from the late 70s, pretty much up until the current form of the band. Actually, it doesn't include the most recent record. But anyway, it's a more or less comprehensive, exhaustive document of the entire career up to about 2 or 3 years ago. I am a huge fan of the Swans. They have been an incredible source of inspiration for me, and I voraciously devoured the book. And I learned a lot of stuff about the band. I learned a lot of stuff about the creative process. I learned a lot about the sort of conviction that he had. And I know that, I've never met him, but people have commented on him as a person, and I have no opinion about any of that because I've never even, I've seen the Swans several times, but I've never interacted with Michael Gira. And I don't even know if I'm pronouncing his name the right way. So anyway, it's my way of pronouncing it. One of the things I did not like about the book was the inclusion of Thurston Moore's input. I found I've always thought that Sonic Youth was a kind of a, how should I put this? They were never really my cup of tea. I felt they were a band that didn't have a good drummer, and I always found that, in my opinion, the drums and the rhythm section really are the lifeblood of a band. That's the heart and blood distribution system of the animal that a band should be. And they never had that, in my opinion. And I felt like, Thurston Moore's snarky comments about a band that's far superior to anything that he's ever done to be a little annoying, and I would have not included him, even though, yeah, sure, he was a guy that was around back then, all that sort of stuff. But I don't know, I just didn't think it added much to the book, except for maybe providing a perspective that might be annoying. So anyway, I don't really like Sonic Youth. I think Kim Gordon's cool, but aside from the band itself, I'm not really a fan. A couple good songs here and there. I would say Evol is pretty cool. I like Daydream Nation, and that's about it, really. I don't really get it. I've seen them a couple times. Kind of boring. They can't really play their instruments. They can't really write songs. And I don't really have a whole lot of use for Sonic Youth. But anyway, other than that, the book was great. I just started reading The Reddening by Adam Neville. Now, this is for horror fans. If you enjoyed The Ritual, Adam is the writer of that book. And there's also a Netflix movie out there that unfaithfully adapts the book to film. However, the two things stand separately, but they're both very enjoyable. The book itself, there's whole sections of the book that didn't make it into the film. The film, I think, generally when the book is so different from the film and the film diverges from the text of the book, I find fault with the movie. But I think in the case of in the case of The Ritual, the cut of this particular film was like a very lean, mean version of the story. Very like an austere version of the book is what made it to the film. And I thought they were both great. They both sort of stimulate different sides of myself, and I enjoyed both of them. The book is definitely worth reading. The movie is definitely worth seeing. And since we all have a lot of time on our hands, check both of them out, in my opinion. Maybe watch the movie first and then read the book, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And I'll leave it at that. But the reddening that just started it, it sounds intriguing. It's about cannibals. It takes place in England. Interesting characters. It takes place over an extended period of time. One of the characters is a recording enthusiast, which I found interesting. Someone who records these dark sounds that are found at the bottom of pits in the abandoned mines, in abandoned industrial facilities, and he just records the natural sounds of these places. And I found that to be compelling. So that little detail about the character it was enough to grab my interest and kind of propel me through the book, even though this guy, well, I'm not going to give too much in it. If anyone out there wants to read it, you'll find it. You'll hopefully think this is a good book, but I 100% back this, and I back Adam Neville with all of his work. Everyone's binging shows these days. I'm late to the game on this, but The Sinner, season 1 and 2. Finished season 1, on season 2 right now. My man Bill Pullman is the star of it. I love Bill Pullman. He's great. It's just definitely, if you're into murder mysteries, I would liken this to, though that's not the same, if you enjoyed the first season of True Detective, if you enjoy the work of David Lynch, I would say that this might be right up your alley. If you enjoyed The Outsider, I enjoyed the book. The movie, the series on HBO was excellent. However, I prefer the Stephen King book, but I still thought the TV version of it, the HBO version, was moody and compelling. And The Sinner, though not like any of those things I mentioned, if you like that, you'll like this. It's just, very, very smart, very well written, good characters. There's like a offbeat sensibility to it, and a lot of that is the interpretation of the character that Bill Pullman does. That guy's got like a very specific way of acting, and maybe they wrote this role for him specifically because it seems tailor-made to his abilities. So anyway, I'm enjoying that. With Stuart Gordon, his recent passing motivated me to check out some of his older films. I mean, From Beyond and The Reanimator, I feel like are in my regular viewing habits, but I went deeper into his catalog and checked out the film Edmund, which was based on a David Mamet play, and it has all of the earmarks of David Mamet's dialogue. And great movie, very, very oddly paced. Highly recommend it, though. Some people, as a matter of fact, Jeff, who I did the horror podcast with, doesn't really like this movie. And I was kind of surprised by that. But anyway, check it out. Stuart Gordon's version of The Pit and the Pendulum was amazing. I love the one that Vincent Price stars in, but Lance Henriksen is terrifying in this movie. And if you're a fan of Edgar Allan Poe, I think that this is a pretty cool interpretation of that. It's not 100% faithful to the short story, but it's still quite good. And then Dagon, always satisfying. Anything that has to do with fishy humans and the sort of abysmal shoreline and ancient civilizations and old gods transforming humanity into these like guild creatures. I think any story that deals with that specifically is like something that I am at least going to check out. Now, speaking of underwater horror, I'm anticipating checking out Underwater, the film. I've been told that there's a Lovecraftian element to that as well, and we'll see. So I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be available streaming, I think, in another week or so. So, I'm going to check that out. Also, speaking of streaming, I caught The Invisible Man. That's something that was a theatrical release, but once all this like pandemic hit, they made it available on Amazon. So I streamed that. I have mixed feelings about that film. I thought it was an interesting take on an old property, an old archetypical character. But, as a film, and maybe we'll talk about that in another Jeff episode of this show or on a future episode of Necromaniacs. We'll see. But yeah, that was my tribute to the late, great Stuart Gordon. And, he'll be missed out there in the world of film and the world of horror writers. There's a show that, a lot of people have been talking about, this Tiger King show, and I watched it, and I got to be honest, I didn't really like it. I probably in the minority, but I found it sad. I found it depressing. I'm an animal lover, and I do not appreciate the treatment of wild animals that are endangered, especially endangered species. And after watching a couple episodes in a row, I felt like my intellect was eroding. I felt like I was getting stupider with every minute that I watched that show. And so anyway, I guess what's good about it was that it raised awareness for some of these big cat breeding farms, and raised some awareness about animal cruelty and that sort of stuff, which I 100% support that. And it shined a light on just how dark all that stuff is. So anyway, not my cup of tea. But some of the things I've had going on right now, writing wise, you guys are, if you're listening to this show, you're probably familiar with Holy Mountain Printing. And they do the Tombs merch, they do Leviathan, they do Integrity. There's a bunch of bands that Danny does merchandise for that I'm sure you guys are into. And he's going to be launching a magazine, which I think is pretty amazing, since Holy Mountain's not just a merch company. I mean, they release records. He's a curator of a lot of this kind of Gojira Japanese monster stuff, and he's just an interesting guy. And Danny Trudell has like the soul of an artist. Like some guys who are t-shirt guys, like merch people, they're printers. They're into making shirts. Not so much into the original artwork. But Danny is like a curator of art, be it music, be it graphic art, and now be it the written word. And he's asked me to contribute some work to his forthcoming magazine, and I'm excited to be part of that, because he and I have developed a really solid friendship over the years, and I've got a lot of respect for him, and I think that he's going to do a great job with this magazine. And I think he's quite brave doing it in a world where print media is not necessarily the go-to that it once was. So I'll be contributing in an interview I did with Joe Bigos and Josh Ethier, who are filmmakers. And they most recently, their film VFW came out. They did Bliss from last year. They did a bunch of other films that I cover in the article. And currently, right now, I'm working on this Integrity career retrospective. And hell, you can write an entire book about Integrity. They've been a band that has touched so many other bands and helped. They were architects of this whole metalcore 90s, sort of thing. Metal and hardcore definitely are not. They used to be estranged cousins back in the 80s, but with bands like Cro-Mags and that one Agnostic Front record, Cause for Alarm, and Carnivore and bands like that, I feel like they the marriage, the cross-pollination of metal and hardcore had its roots in that late 80s, mid 80s scene. But it wasn't until bands like Integrity and Starkweather, I would even say Rorschach maybe, Turmoil is another band that comes to mind, put together this whole style of music that has been deemed metalcore. So, Integrity is not only that. Starkweather is amazing. I love that band. They have a whole dimensions to their music. But aside from Starkweather, I feel like Integrity might have been one of the only bands that wasn't two-dimensional. There's so much depth to the music, and a lot of it has to do with just Dwid's interest in the occult and industrial music and other non-metal influences that found its way into the music of Integrity. I mean, that's what attracted me to the band in the beginning was, like I was never into like the scene or into bands that had songs about being vegan or straight edge or whatever. I wasn't into like the Champion sweatshirt trip, none of that stuff. At the time Integrity came out, I had just found out about black metal. I was into bands like Buzz Oven and I Hate God, and I was reading about Manson and serial killers, and discovering like more extreme horror films. This is like in the early to mid 90s, and Integrity came around, and I remember seeing the artwork and the titles of the albums and the song titles, and before I even heard the music, I knew that it was something I was going to be into. Humanity is the devil. The artwork, the Pusshead album cover, the Process Church of Final Judgment imagery, the 4-pi symbol, songs, the references to Abraxas and all this like Manson stuff, like that was like deeply part of my consciousness at the time. So anyway, to make a long story short, right now, I've put together all the interviews. I've interviewed all these different people that are involved in the band. I've gotten quotes from different people that have released music by them, that have been in the band. I've got a couple hours of interviews with Dwid. I'm wading through all this material. I'm writing my own original thoughts about the band, and I'm putting it all together. And like I said, you can write an entire book about them, but this is going to be serialized in Danny's magazine. So I'm really looking forward to getting this thing over the fence. I've been juggling this along with all those other things I mentioned earlier. I've been trying to get this done, and I guess with work slowing down a little bit, the tour being canceled, band practice indefinitely on hold until we can actually have clearance to be close to each other again. I have more time, so there you go. I'm going to be working on that and looking forward to it. Anyway, I won't take up too much more of you guys' time. Once again, thanks for listening. If you want to check out Metal Matters, that comes out every Tuesday. Every Tuesday. We're like the U.S. mail. Rain, sleet, shine, whatever, man. Comes out. Coronavirus, nothing stops Metal Matters from coming out. So that'll be delivered to you every Tuesday. And there'll be more of these. This is a good opportunity to get back into doing Everything Went Black. We're in the planning phases for relaunching Necromaniacs on the Tombs front. The drums are recorded in May. I'll be getting down to the studio one way or the other and recording guitars. Drew's going to be recording bass. Going to be doing some vocals. Matt will be showing up to rip some solos and shred. And, it's going to be good. I'm looking forward to doing it and getting that thing done, hopefully, if all goes well. The plan is to have that record out this fall, and hopefully we're in a position where we can go out and support this thing and take it to the streets, which is like more so than anything, that is what I live for, is to go out there into the world and present this stuff. And I've said it before, but I feel incredibly fortunate to still be able to be doing this stuff at this stage of my life. So anyway, hopefully this fall we'll be getting out there on the road and seeing what's up. So anyone, be safe, be healthy, and hit me back through whatever channel you follow me with or whatever channel we can get in touch with. And if you guys have stories of your own, you can send me MP3s or WAV files or whatever, and I'll cut it into the next couple of shows. So anyway, stay safe.
never did before, as I wait for you. My desire for you is a curse, a scar, a wound which will not heal. Release me from this prison as I go down and I kneel. The memory of